Better late than never. How's everybody doing? I'm Jay Elson. Welcome to another season of Midco Motorsports. In early May, Knoxville Raceway announced it would delay the start of its weekly racing series until the state of Iowa permitted at least a limited number of spectators to attend those events. That day finally arrived on Saturday with the track's official 67th season opener. The 305s led things off with their 15-lap main event, and it's Russ Hall bolting to the lead ahead of Matthew Stelzer. The 99 not going away, though. Stelzer replaces Hall at the front on the lap 7 restart. That was the wake-up call Hall needed, and he responds the next time around. No more lead changes after that. Russ Hall drives on to collect his third career victory at Knoxville. 18 laps the distance for the 360s. The 64 of John Agin into the lead off the start, and he looks strong until lap 9. That's when Agin's luck ran out. The 64 gets into the fence as he tries to avoid a spun-out sprinter, and that would be the end of the line for him. Carson McCarl inherited the lead for the ensuing restart, but he'd have to hold off Clint Garner. The 27 with just enough juice to stay out front, and McCarl would pull away from there. Knoxville's defending track champ picks up right where he left off last year, notching win number 1 for 2020. There would not be much drama in the season's first 410 feature, and that's because Brian Brown had it in rocket mode on Saturday. Blackjack had the hammer down the whole way, and he would see no challengers. Brown goes wire to wire for his 50th career win at Knoxville Raceway, which tied him with the great Sammy Swindell for 5th place on the track's all-time wins list. Friday was already the 4th night of racing at Rapids Speedway, but the first with an open grandstand. Those folks saw the 61N of Nick Brady lead the hobby stock feature to green and then pull away for an early advantage. Brady stayed out front for the first 9 laps and change, but any leader knows that Dustin Gulbranson is always back there somewhere. And here he comes. The 5-time defending USRA National Hobby Stock champion swipes the lead away from Brady, and that was your ball game. Gulbranson collects yet another checkered flag, giving him 2 in his first 3 starts at Rocky this season. The B-Mods were next, and this one was all Cole Christensen. The young Sioux Falls native drove his 7C from 3rd to 1st on lap 1 and then held on through multiple restarts to pick up his first victory of the season in Rock Rapids. Last but not least were the USRA stock cars. Laverne, Minnesota's Colton Ahrens has had the 46 car dialed in the last few weeks, and it looks strong again on Friday. Ahrens got out into that clean air and used it to build himself a sizable lead. But he would get some company on the final lap. After working his way up from 10th, Dustin Larson giving Ahrens everything he's got in the 5L. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't quite enough. Ahrens holds him off to become the first guy not named Elijah Zevenbergen to win a stock car feature in Rock Rapids this season. Zevenbergen, by the way, who'd won 3 straight to start the year, took the back row challenge in this one, starting 21st and finishing 4th. Well, stay put because we are just getting started. Coming up, we'll check in on the scene in North Dakota, highlights from River Cities and Red River Valley after this.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Dakota Speedway.
And welcome back. Well, Friday was supposed to be the first of 2 appearances for the World of Outlaws sprint cars at River City Speedway this season, but that show was called off due to circumstances surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. The good news was that there would be racing after all, as track officials decided to fill that void with their regular classes. That, of course, included Jordan Adams and the NOSA Sprints, which were racing for the first time in 2020. We pick it up, though, with the Wissota Street Stocks, where James Meager edged out fellow front-row starter Tucker Peterson for the early lead. But both of those guys would drop back a few laps later. A traffic jam in Turn 4 slows the pace, And that opens the door for the number 6 starter, Ryan Johnson, who slingshots all the way to the lead. No one would catch the 25 after that as Johnson cruises to his first win of the year at River Cities. Just 11 cars for the Midwest Modifieds feature on Friday. Defending track champ Lance Schill was one of them. He started in the middle of the pack, but the middle of the track was wide open. That allowed Schill to work his way to the front before the end of lap 1. A handful of restarts gave the 2S of Matt Scow a chance to make things interesting, but Schill was just too strong. He too notches his first win of the year in Grand Forks. Shane Romling drew the pole for the first NOSA feature of the season, but it was the number 10 of Bob Martin sliding up from 4th to gain the early lead. Restarts were the name of the game in this one too, though, and that always favors the top guns. Austin Pierce certainly one of them, and he would eventually capitalize, slipping past Martin on the bottom. Pierce had to endure a few more restarts himself, but the Grand Forks native never did relinquish the point, and he sees checkers in the season debut. Really special moment to cap off the night in the Wissota late models. Before the race, Ryan Corbett pledged to donate all of his winnings for the night to the family of fallen Grand Forks police officer Cody Holte, who was killed in the line of duty a few weeks ago. And Corbett took the top prize. He fends off Dustin Strand to get the victory, which is surely one he won't forget anytime soon. In West Fargo, the Northern Renegades non-wing sprint cars helped usher in the new season at Red River Valley. Scott Jacobson felt the highs and lows in the IMCA Sport Mods after leading most of the race. Engine failure ended his night in an instant. Jacobson's pain would be Luke Johnson's gain. The lead fell in his lap, and the defending track champ never looked back. Meanwhile, the reigning stock car champ would find himself involved in one of the best battles of the night. Barnesville, Minnesota's Rob Van Mill went toe-to-toe with Rick Schultz of Horace, North Dakota, all the way to the finish. In the end, it was Schultz's pass with 2 laps to go that proved to be the difference. 14-year-old Grand Forks driver Brody Eckert stole the show in the IMCA Hobby Stocks. After spinning out to start the race, Eckert pulled off some serious redemption. The youngster battled back to grab the lead in the final few laps, and he drives on to get the win in what was only his second time ever in a hobby stock. Baxter, Minnesota's Billy the Kid Kendall started on the pole for the IMCA Modifieds main event, but the brothers Arneson certainly made him work to stay there. Casey and Austin kept the pressure on all night, only to see Kendall seal his first win at Red River Valley with a gutsy late race maneuver in traffic. Then it was time for the night's special event. Scary moment early as Bismarck's Zach Holstrand takes a violent tumble in turn 1. Fortunately, all parties would walk away uninjured. Things would get twisted again on the white flag lap. Race leader Ken Ron of Grand Rapids, Minnesota gets together with Jory Hughes in turn 2, and that wreck would bring an end to everyone's night. Officials called the race, awarding the win to Jack Berger, who was up to second after starting 13th. The MSTS 360s were back in Hartford on Saturday. We'll recap the action from I90 Speedway when Midco Motorsports rolls on. With no racing in Nebraska to date, I90 Speedway has seen a serious surge in car counts to start its season. Just last week, the track at Hartford, South Dakota set a new all-time record with 138 cars in the infield. That number dipped to 111 this week, partly because conditions were less than ideal. Warm air and high winds created a dry, slick surface that was challenging from the onset. The hobby stock certainly could attest to that. The caution flag dominated their evening, which saw 5 of 19 starters fail to finish. No such issues for Tyler Schlumbaum, though. The Sioux Falls native came all the way from the 6th row to claim his second straight feature win at I90, giving him 4 for his career. The B-Mods had similar struggles, although that race also saw a pretty good battle at the front. Dave Kennedy made a quick climb from 5th to take over the top spot on lap 2, but he'd get a solid challenge later on from Camden Myers. The 1M finds some speed coming out of turn 2 and almost slips past Kennedy on the inside. Myers tried to mount another charge a couple of laps later, but traffic gets in the way this time, and that would essentially end his bid for the win. Kennedy weathers a couple of late restarts and goes on to collect his first victory of 2020. After failing to finish in either of the first 2 weeks at I90, Corey Yai was hoping to make his own luck from the pole of the late model street stocks feature. The 64 would get tested early by Briley Gow 2 laps in. It looked like the 83X might win that fight as he makes the pass out of turn 2. But the caution flag would fly before the end of that lap, so Gow gets sent back to second. That was great news for Yai, who found another gear after that. He officially led every lap en route to his 13th career late model street stocks win. The IMCA Race Savers rolled out next. Hartford native Jacob Hughes showed the way for the first 3 laps, but that's where Elliot Amdahl entered the fray. The 51A up from 11th to challenge for the lead. He gets wheel to wheel with Hughes in turn 4 and then picks him off a short time later. That was it right there. Amdahl drives on to collect his first career win at I90, and it came on his birthday. Last but not least, the night's main event featuring the MSTS 360s. This was a 2-horse race between pole setter Eric Lutz and defending series champ Jack Dover. The 5-car doing all it could to keep the 53 at bay, but it felt like a matter of when, not if. After hounding Lutz relentlessly, Dover finally catches the break he needed on lap 19. Lutz gets forced up the track by a back marker, and that allows Dover to move into the lead. And he would finish it off from there. Dover notches his second straight win at I90 and his 29th with the MSTS. He is as big of an advocate for sprint car racing as there is in the entire country. Find out why Kevin Rudeen continues to invest in the sport he loves after this. Welcome back to Midco Motorsports. Well, on this show, we are constantly talking about people that make an impact on the track. But the fact is, some of racing's greatest advocates are behind the scenes, helping provide a financial boost wherever and whenever they can. One guy who certainly qualifies there is Kevin Rudeen. He's the focus of tonight's Inside Track, presented by Dakota Speedway. As far as Kevin Rudeen is concerned, there is no better day than race day, especially when he gets the chance to be there himself.
I would say the average year, 20 to 30 times I get to the races, so these are my favorite days. You know, I'm lucky with work, but I'm busy, have a great family, but when I get to come to the track, it's my favorite days. I love it.
Rudeen shows that in every way possible. Not only does he own one of the top teams on the All-Star Circuit of Champions Tour, he's also well known for kicking in bonus money at events all across the country, something he's already done twice this year at South Dakota's Park Jefferson International Speedway.
I grew up racing with my dad and my family. It's important to me, all kinds of racing. And sprint car racing, I think, is the most pure form of racing left in America. These guys are so dedicated and such talented guys out here driving, so I just support it as much as I can.
Now, Rudeen's generosity doesn't stop there. He also founded the Race Rudeen Foundation in honor of his late son, with a mission to support organizations and programs that encourage a healthy and productive life free of addiction. But there is a racing tie-in as well. The second annual Race Rudeen Foundation race, featuring the All-Star Circuit of Champions and the IRA Sprints, is set for July 30th in Plymouth, Wisconsin. The winner that night will take home $26,000. Now, Soo Speedway played a very important, albeit short-term, role in the history of racing in the Sioux Falls area. We'll share that story next.
Midco Motorsports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Dakota Speedway.
The history of auto racing in the Sioux Falls area is both rich and rocky, with success and turmoil often running side by side. That is certainly evident within the story of Soo Speedway, which experienced a rise and fall that helped shape the sport for generations. Here now is part one of that story, which originally aired on Midco Sports Magazine. As time pushes forward in southeast South Dakota, so too does the inevitability of change. The hustle and bustle of Sioux Falls is extending its reach in every direction, making land like this harder and harder to find.
If I haven't found 100,000 golf balls, I haven't found nothing.
This particular plot on the city's extreme eastern edge has been in Robert Van Beek Jr.'s family for nearly 60 years.
I've seen that one before.
But each one of these little white balls is a reminder that those days, along with the notion of being in the country, are numbered.
The city wants us to come in, which eventually it will. Somebody will buy it and they'll have their way.
The sad part is, when that day finally comes, it will further camouflage a story that's already been covered up by decades of inactivity.
Well, where that black dirt is up there, there was a cement pad we tore out. Yeah, it was right. It'd be right up out in here, right up in here. When you walked from this, that was a gate right there.
Believe it or not, there was a time when this place was an entertainment destination and where the city of Sioux Falls got its first taste of stock car racing.
They say it was a fast track, really fast track.
Stock car racing was born in the southeastern United States near the end of World War II and slowly made its way north. The Lyon County Fairgrounds in Rock Rapids, Iowa was one of the first facilities in the Northern Plains to host the sport on a regular basis. It was there that a man named Bob Van An cut his teeth as a track promoter. Unfortunately, according to his son Tom, it's also where Van An would get his first experience with the confrontational part of the business.
Got into it with the fair board down there and decided, well, instead of just renting their track, we'll build one up in Sioux Falls. Sioux Falls is a growing community, and that's what happened.
And we have as our guest Mr. Bob on our immediate right here, and Francis Van An on the outside there, who have Soo Speedways just outside of Sioux Falls. Is that right, Bob?
That's right, Jim.
It was my father and his brother and 3 other guys from Rock Rapids.
Tom Savage was 15 years old and already a race car enthusiast when his family moved to Sioux Falls from the Indianapolis area in 1954. That happened to be the same year that Soo Speedway opened.
It was a 38-mile racetrack. It had a seating capacity of 2,500 people, which was kind of unheard of for a little dirt racetrack back in the day. It had a lighting system. The entire track was well lit. It was really the latest up-to-date racetrack in the area. I used to like to go in there with my camera and my notebook, and I thought of a lot of creative ways to sneak into the pit area. But the guy who ran the racetrack, Bob Van An, he thought of every creative way to catch me and escort me into the grandstand.
Van An put a lot of people in that grandstand. He also displayed a knack for attracting talent to the pits.
He was involved in the automotive business, so he knew automobiles, and he was a pretty square guy, you know. He had a lot of foresight. He knew what was coming down the pike.
Savage recalls one particular decision that helped take Soo Speedway to another level. When the track first opened, modified stock cars were all the rage. They were also expensive, so when numbers started to decline around 1956, Van An added a strictly stock class.
It was a great idea because it introduced a lot of new people into the sport, and by the end of the 57 season, there were as many strictly stock cars as there were modified cars.
Van An's vision helped push the average car count as high as 60 to 80 per week. Drivers flocked to Sioux Falls from all over the area, places like Aberdeen, Chamberlain, Sioux City, and beyond. Soo Speedway was thriving, both on the track and at the gate.
The place was packed. Every Sunday night it was packed. I mean, when they had all the seats taken, people were standing up and watching it.
Meanwhile, about 10 miles to the northeast, another racetrack was struggling to find any success at all. Like Van An's group, Till Hewsett opened his facility near Brandon, South Dakota in the spring of 1954.
He had a 3/8-mile oval carved out there with nothing else. There was no guardrail, no lights, no bleachers. There was nothing there. And because there was no lights, he couldn't race at night. He had to race in the afternoon. Racing on the afternoon on a dirt racetrack is very, very difficult because it gets so dusty. So he was behind the 8 ball from the beginning.
Houston made every effort to catch up with his competition. He tried adding lights, moving the races to different nights, even resizing the track. None of it worked. So at the end of the 1955 season, Cities Speedway went dormant, leaving Soo Speedway to rule the local racing scene alone. Now, as we said, that is just half of that story. Be sure to tune in next week to find out exactly how things went south for Soo Speedway and the direct correlation those events had to the resurgence of Houston's. All right, that is our time for this week. For producer Levi Vanderwady, I'm Jay Elson. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you back here next Wednesday night for another episode of Midco Motorsports.